Good Friday afternoon, and thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Rena Sargentopoulos. Let's get right to your headlines. Legislative leaders hope they can finish finalizing all their budget bills by the end of the day. They're meeting for a fourth straight day outside of their regular session to work on the budget in preparation for a special session. Yesterday, they tackled big issues like education and human services. So far, bills on commerce, jobs, transportation, and the environment are all either done or close to done. Governor Walz says a special session could start now as early as next week. A lot of movement right now in Minnesota's cannabis industry. The White Earth Tribal Band joining the state in a first-of-its-kind cannabis agreement as a cannabis regulation bill sits on the governor's desk awaiting his signature. The bill makes technical tweaks to the state's 2023 cannabis law, including adding a hemp wholesaler license for low-potency products. That will help bring safe, lab-tested products to the legal market, which will get a boon from the tribes. Jennifer Hoff has more on how the new partnership works.
Pictures tell the story of the state's newest pot shop, set to open Saturday some 200 miles away in Moorhead. Its CEO marking what is a historic moment.
We're just pumped to be able to get going.
Wabigoon Mashkiki is the White Earth Nation's cannabis business. The tribe just sealing a deal with the state to operate outside the reservation for the first time.
That's what makes this very unique. Yes.
The lawyer leading the negotiation says it took a year to lay out the terms and conditions in this 90-page document called a compact that maintains both parties' independence, but also how to best collaborate.
Quality control and safe marketplace on the reservation is of paramount importance to White Earth Nation, and this document lays out that framework.
Several tribes have long been growing and selling recreational pot on their land since Minnesota legalized it 2 years ago, their laws already mirroring the state's. The new agreement also caps the number of businesses White Earth can operate, limits how much it can grow, and authorizes transportation and trade on state property. Important because Minnesota hasn't approved any licenses yet for cultivators.
What people are going to see is there's no product, right? And this is where White Earth Nation can step in and help supply the product.
Another step forward in a retail marketplace some say Minnesotans are more than ready for.
This is a real business, and we're taking it very, very seriously, and we're very privileged to have this opportunity.
New today, all 18 kids aboard this school bus that crashed in Isanti County are going to be okay. It happened just west of Isanti. Superintendent of the Cambridge Isanti School District says the bus was driving on a gravel road when the shoulder gave way. The bus slowly rolled onto its side with all the kids inside. The superintendent, Nate Rudolph, credits the bus driver and first responders for making sure those kiddos got out okay. Well, this weekend marks 5 years since George Floyd was murdered by former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. New today, his brother speaking out ahead of the events around the world to honor Floyd's life and the legacy he leaves behind.
And at the end of the day, it's not just my family. You got to think about Breonna Taylor. You got to think about Ahmaud Arbery. You got to think about Eric Garner. You got to think about Stephon Clark. You got to think about so much, because just being around all these families, I don't want to be a part of this. You know, I think about Tyree Nicholas every day. I think about what his mother is going through. I think about what happened to any individual who lost their loved one due to this. I'm going to constantly think about that, because it's a lot of people who wake up every day and don't know what's going to go on in the world that we live in today.
George Floyd Day of Remembrance events begin today and go through Sunday. You can watch coverage of those on our newscasts and in our stream, which is available 24 hours a day by downloading the KARE 11 Plus app for your TV. Jana Shortle will also host a half-hour special reflecting on the 5 years that have passed since George Floyd's death. You can watch that at 6:30 Monday night and streaming on KARE 11 Plus. A check of the markets this afternoon as Wall Street reacts to new tariff threats from President Donald Trump. The president giving U.S. company Apple an ultimatum: build iPhones in the U.S. or get hit with a 25% tariff. Last week, Trump said he was unhappy with Apple CEO Tim Cook's announcement that his company plans to make the phones at recently built plants in India. A Trump administration official said Cook and Trump met at the White House earlier this week, but the topic of their conversation was not divulged. Apple has not commented on Trump's demand. The president also threatening to slap a 50% tariff on goods from the European Union. In a social media post Friday morning, the president said it is because of trade negotiations with the EU are not progressing. Trump called out what he described as trade barriers, unjustified lawsuits against U.S. companies, and more that have led to a massive trade deficit. The president said he's recommending the 50% tariff go into effect on June 1st. There's new information overnight involving a private plane that crashed into a military housing neighborhood in San Diego. The NTSB said all 6 people aboard the plane died, including music executive Dave Shapiro, who owned that plane. The crash forcing the entire neighborhood that it crashed into to run for their lives. NBC's Liz Kruitz is at the crash site with the very latest.
Well, hey there, it was a terrifying scene here. This plane originated at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey before briefly stopping in Kansas City to refuel and then continuing on to here in San Diego, where the plane crashed into this home behind me, creating a huge explosion. I spoke to the family that was inside the home asleep when this happened. They were jolted awake, just a terrifying ordeal. They had neighbors come to help them escape through their backyard. The husband says that he's been in the military for 13 years and doesn't think he'll ever experience anything as scary as this. Authorities are also saying that they're investigating whether potentially the weather was a factor. It was dense, foggy conditions. And according to a source familiar with the investigation, the automated weather system that tells pilots the conditions at the airport was not working at the time. We are learning details now about, sadly, the victims on the plane. The FAA says that 6 people were on board, and officials do not believe there were any survivors. A music group says that 3 of their employees were on the plane, including a music agent, Dave Shapiro. And it's also believed that the drummer of a band, or formerly of the band, The Devil Wears Prada, was sadly also on the flight. We expect an update later today from the NTSB. They'll be here investigating through the day. Back to you.
New this afternoon, the Piano Man Billy Joel canceling all of his upcoming tour dates because of a major health issue. In a statement, Joel says he's been diagnosed with normal pressure hydrocephalus, a brain disorder that his doctors saying is making him stop performing while he goes through his physical therapy. Anyone who had tickets to the upcoming shows will be refunded automatically. That is according to the announcement from Joel. Well, today we are in the heart of one of the busiest travel weekends of the year. AAA expects 45 million people to be on the move for Memorial Day weekend. We know the roads will be very crowded this weekend. AAA predicts about 40 million Americans will take a road trip for their holiday weekend. And they say noon to 8 o'clock today will be the worst time to be out driving. Then on Memorial Day, 4 to 7 p.m. is expected to be the busiest on the roads. And here's a look at what it will cost you to fill up your tank here in Minnesota. It will cost you on average $3.04 a gallon. If you're driving to Wisconsin, prices are about the same at $3.05. Down in Iowa, it is a little bit cheaper, with the average sitting there just below $3. Well, this weekend marks the start of the 100 deadliest days on Minnesota roads, the time of year when State Patrol cracks down on speeding and distracted driving. But this year, they have a new tool that they hope will help cut down on crashes and, of course, save lives. Gordon Severson shows us how it works.
This time of year, the State Patrol responds to hundreds, if not thousands, of crashes across the state. And here in St. Cloud, they're working on a new program that could someday predict where those crashes are going to be before they actually happen. For years, MnDOT and the State Patrol have studied traffic patterns and crash statistics. Imagine having all of that data plus more available right at your fingertips.
What we're doing is we're leveraging brand new and emerging technology.
Mike Hansen is Minnesota's traffic safety coordinator. He was also a state trooper for 32 years.
When you work an area, you know where your hotspots are kind of at.
But Hansen says their new pilot program, the Road Safety Information Center, is so much more than just a hunch.
You can see next to this, there's a prediction for each week.
They're working with several technology companies to crunch the data faster than ever before. And eventually the goal is to use real-time traffic information, weather, and algorithms to forecast where crashes will happen.
So this can actually look into the future and figure out where crashes are likely to happen.
That's our eventual goal, is to get into that predictive analytic capability.
A handful of law enforcement agencies in the St. Cloud area are testing it out this summer during the 100 deadliest days on Minnesota roads.
We want to do things better than we ever have before, and we can do that by using things we've never used before.
St. Cloud Police Chief Jeff Oxton says this program will help law enforcement agencies that are struggling with staffing. By knowing where crashes are most likely to happen, they can assign officers to that area and respond to crashes faster.
We have to do more with less. But that doesn't mean we have to do less, right? We need to focus our efforts at where they're needed most.
And if this program works, they don't want to stop at just the State Patrol. They want to give it to EMS and firefighters, basically anyone who responds to serious crashes, so they can get there more quickly and get people the help they need. In St. Cloud, Gordon Severson, KARE 11 News.
Stick with us. More news and weather coming up after the break.